Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Americans love using their credit cards, the most secure and hassle-free way to pay. But D.C. politicians want to change that with the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill lets corporate megastores pick how your credit card is processed, allowing them to use untested payment networks that jeopardize your data security and rewards. Corporate megastores will make more money, and you pay the price. Tell Congress to guard your card, because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
This is Cop Talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, the Captain.
Hello, WABC listeners and YouTube viewers. Today we have a roundtable. With us as a co-host is retired New York City Police Department Sergeant Rory Capra. Say hello, Rory.
Hey, good afternoon, Captain Ed and Kevin. Pleasure to be here as always.
So before we get to Rory, our guest today, along with Rory Capra, retired Sergeant from NYPD, is David Chong. David is the Commissioner of the City of White Plains, Department of Public Safety. David, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's I know many of you from my time in the NYPD. Everybody here makes me feel very comfortable because you were all outstanding police officers.
Well, thank you for being our guest today. You're one of our own. We're all family here, as you just mentioned. Why don't you tell our listeners your background, where you grew up, education, etc.?
Well, I grew up actually from a broken family, which was very rare in my day. And I was born, in the late 50s. And what happened is that my grandparents raised me. Now, surprisingly, my paternal grandfather was one of the last commanding generals in Chiang Kai-shek's army.
Wow.
And he held Shanghai Harbor and Beijing Harbor so everybody could, the nationalists could escape to the island of Formosa, which is now Taiwan. So he was offered amnesty. He knew all the generals, Montgomery from England. He knew Patton, he knew MacArthur, he knew all these generals, and he went to the English Academy, the English version of their West Point for officers. He was sent there by the Chinese government. So it's funny because when the war was winding down and, Germany was, basically defeated, all the assets went towards the Japanese. And my grandfather had been, and he told me this story, when I was old enough to understand, he had said to the Americans and the British, he said, we're fighting a civil war plus we're fighting the Japanese. He said, the communists are more than willing to join forces with us to make one Chinese army to get rid of the Japanese. We would like to do that, so we have a united front, so we're not, Chinese is not fighting Chinese. And after we get rid of the Japanese and after the war is over, then if we want to resume our civil war, we can resume our civil war. And he told me he was told no by both the United States government and the British government. And they said, no, absolutely not. You will not join forces with the communists. So Japan did a lot of damage in China, but the American and the British forces came in. And after they, had tamp down the concern with Nazi Germany, they concentrated on the Pacific. And, so my grandfather told me many stories and was a very interesting man. So I grew up, he got amnesty. And the funny thing about England was he was a known English officer of I forgot the royal, whatever they called it, order of officers of the English military. And he was offered amnesty in the United Kingdom everywhere but Britain. And this is how the British were. Everywhere but Britain, he was offered amnesty. So he was offered Ireland, he was offered India, he was offered everywhere in the British Empire except for Britain. So he chose Canada. So long story short, I was born and raised in Canada, Toronto, Canada. And I didn't come here until I came from a broken family. So I didn't come to New York until the 1969 Mets and the Knicks and all the excitement of all these teams winning all the championships. That's when I came to New York City.
Kind of like an omen of good things to come.
Yes, yes.
So when you got to New York City, where did you reside?
I was down on the Lower East Side by Cherry and Monroe.
Okay.
My mother worked in a garment factory. I didn't really know my mother, but, my grandparents had gotten old, and they said that, you have to take your son back. So my mother took me back, and she worked 3 jobs in Chinatown. And it was much different down there then. Much, much different down there then. And, I grew up in public housing first couple of years of my life. And the funny thing is that, people have this perception of public housing and everything. But when you grow up and you grow up around people that are very diverse, I grew up, my friends were Puerto Rican. My friends were poor Jewish people. My friends were black people. My friends were of all ethnicity groups. And the major thing we had in common in growing up in public housing was economics. We were all struggling to survive in economics. So, yeah, there were street gangs, there were gangs and everything else. But, my mom, a little old lady, well, no, she wasn't that old then, but a little lady, 4'10", could walk home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and these gangs would be out there in the courtyard and everything and say, "Hello, Mrs. Chong," because they knew Mrs. Chong lived in the developments. Right. If you were a stranger, then you went to war. But, so that's the environment I grew up on. And then what happened is when I was ready, I went to Seward Park High School for my first year. And then my mom got the American dream. She married my stepfather, and they moved out to Flushing, Queens. And Flushing, Queens, if you know now, is one of the largest Asian communities, actually on the East Coast of the United States. Back then, it was not. Right. So they moved out to Flushing, Queens. They got the American dream. They had, they got a little house out in Flushing, Queens. And I grew up in Flushing, Queens until I went to Flushing High School. And then just on a whim, I was out with a bunch of friends. This was during the disco age. We were working in the disco overnight as bus boys and people that were working in the disco. And we would go out in the morning and go to Jones Beach. And that was basically our day. And the money was good. It was it was cash money and everything else. It was good money. Yeah. And we went out, and one day one of my friends, silly as it was, said that his father was a police officer and that they had not given a police exam in New York City for quite some time, that they had actually laid off police officers in the early 70s. And they had not given a police exam. And I believe at the time, and I may be, a little short on memory on this, but I believe at the time you had to show a driver's license and pay $5 to take the exam. But you could walk in and take the exam. So he wanted to go to Greenwich Village that day, that they were giving the exam. So being his buddy, I said, all right, I want to go to Greenwich Village, right? But I really don't want to pay $5 to take a test. My goodness, and $5 was $5 back then. So I went in with him, but being his buddy and everything else, we went into a public school, signed up, showed my license, gave him $5, and sat down and took an exam. And next thing you knew, I scored extremely, extremely high on the exam. Now, at the time, I was going to Queensborough Community College, and I was going to basically work in the restaurant business, with the discotheques and all this other stuff. I enjoyed that. And I got a call. Well, first I got a card in the mail and said, you're 100 and something on the list. And I'm like, what? And they're like, you're 100 and something on the list. So I knew nothing about policing. Actually, I didn't like the police. We had housing police when we were down living in the developments, and we all knew who these officers were. And our biggest thing was just to stay out of their way, And they didn't take any nonsense either, by the way.
Well, that was PSA 4, right?
Yes, and they didn't take any nonsense. The housing police never took any nonsense. I always laughed. I always said we could get away with stuff with the city police more than we could get away with stuff with the housing police. So bottom line is I took an exam. I scored really, really high. And a professor at Queensborough Community, I was getting my associates in business marketing and management. And they said, an associate's, that's good, but, what are you going to do? What are you going to wait? What are you going to do? So they recommended go to John Jay College. John Jay College is the college to go to. You'll meet a lot of police officers. You'll meet a lot of professors that are police officers and everything else. And you can get a little bit of a taste for what it's like to be policemen. So, at the time, the only thing I knew was Hollywood policemen. Right, I would watch Kojak, and I would watch these Hill Street Blues and these shows on TV. But I didn't know anything about policing, and I thought policemen got into shootouts every day, and then the next day they came back into work and they get into another shootout. So I like the excitement of it. Of course, in retrospect, I have had a wonderful, wonderful career. I love the NYPD. The NYPD is deep in my heart. I made so many friends. Yeah. And we used to say to ourselves, you know what? You don't have to pay me to come into work. I want to go into work. You don't have to pay me to go into work. I love the NYPD.
Now, Commissioner, just to go back to, coming from Canada down to Cherry Street, basically, do you play hockey? Because Canada is known for hockey, and Cherry Street has a roller hockey rink there, as you may know.
No, I learned to play basketball. I was the littlest guy on the basketball court, but I was fast as a rabbit. So I learned how to play basketball. I learned how to play stickball. But hockey was my, I loved hockey. I came from Canada, Toronto Maple Leafs, the whole 9 yards, Montreal Canadiens, right. The original six. But unfortunately, back then, we just had TV. Right. We didn't have anything other than antenna TV. So you would rarely catch a hockey game on TV.
So NYPD, you come on the job. Now, tell us about your career with the NYPD.
Well, it started kind of weird because, again, I knew nothing about the NYPD except for what my professors at John Jay College told me. And I had many really, looking back at their names, I didn't realize the talent that I had as professors in the NYPD. One of the persons that was one of my professors was a guy named Anthony Bauza. And he was, I believe he became, well, he was a 3-star chief in the NYPD. I think he became the chief of transit. And then he went out to Minneapolis and became the chief of Minneapolis. But these were some of the people that I was exposed to. I was exposed to some really, really talented people. And they took the education. I mean, I gobbled it up because it was exciting to me, and I sat in classrooms with officers that were trying to get their degree, and I would just look at them, and I was, oh man, do I want to be like him? And I would see, their silver badge around their neck sometimes, and I was just like infatuated with being one of them. So I did graduate from the NYPD. I graduated with a bachelor's of criminal justice, and at the same time, because I had done so well on the test, I was hired by the NYPD. And again, like I was saying, what was weird about it was I didn't know anything about the police department, and I'm standing online for my medical, and here I am, a kid, 18 years old with a long ponytail, earrings, and a whole 9 yards. And a gentleman comes up. And back then, everybody smoked. And we're in the health section, right? We're in the health section, and everybody's got a cigarette in their mouth, right?
No ventilation.
Yeah, no ventilation. So you were weird because there was honestly, it was like the aircraft. There was like a no smoking area. Right?
Yeah, it's funny, right?
But other than that, everybody smoked.
Right.
So a guy came out, and I won't mention his name, but he did remind me of Theo Kojak in the show Kojak. He came out. He identified himself as a lieutenant, and he started berating me up and down, and I didn't know what I did wrong. I wanted to cry. I'm standing in line with a bunch of other kids, and I wanted to cry. Now, the funny thing is that back then, most of the people I was standing online with, their relatives were cops. Their relatives were cops. I had nobody that was a cop. But, I was standing online with people. I would talk to them and say, oh, my uncle's a police officer, or my father's a police officer, or this and that. And I found that fascinating. So I was offered an opportunity, which, back then, the technology, we would never do that now. And back then, the technology, well, number one is the political climate has changed. Back then, if I went into federal court and I would be behind a sheet because I was undercover, and I would testify in the grand jury or whatever, my word was golden. People would sit there, they would listen to me, they would listen to what I had to say and everything else, and my word was golden. I never had any issues with any grand jury I went in front of because I was hidden behind this cloth, and I had a phony name, and they distorted my voice and everything else. And I think it was fascinating for the people to on the grand jury to see that. And then when you went into, when the time came and we did the first RICO on the Asian gangs, we did it on the hip sing. And I put quite a few people away for life sentences. And unfortunately, quite a few people disappeared. They either ran back to China or Hong Kong or literally disappeared. And it was a tough time for me because here I am, a good guy, acting like a real bad guy. And I went to their weddings. I had girlfriends with them. I had this, I was that. I was very entrusted. And for a couple years, I had a hard time adjusting when I came out of Undercover back to civilian life because in one way, the Chinese community looked at me as a hero, but in another way, they looked at me as a traitor, because the Chinese would always take care of their own problems. And, I was the first one that really actually penetrated the gang. The gang was the Flying Dragons. And they were a very, very powerful gang responsible for a lot of violence in Chinatown. And I rose up through the ranks of Street Die Lo, which is basically the captain of the streets. And at my time, and this is before Atlantic City started booming with the buses and all this other stuff, we had basement casinos all over Chinatown, and we had... I'll be honest, they're whorehouses, right? Houses of prostitution. We had houses of prostitution all over Chinatown. And our customer was the cook, the chef, the this, the that, the guy that would work all week, toil all week and whatever, and then he would come in and he would pay for a massage and sex, and he would gamble and this and that. And I ran the protection. And I did a very good job at it. I ran the protection, and, like I said, we ended up putting a lot of people away, and I had to keep telling myself, because they say now, gambling. I mean, you look at gambling now, you can gamble on anything, right? But back then it was a vice, right? And besides the gambling and the prostitution, which is, you'd say to yourself, oh, those are self-incurred vices. I got mixed up with the guns because I was a gang member. So I bought numerous guns from down south. I got mixed up with the narcotics because part of the group was into heroin, and Asian heroin was the purest heroin you could get at the time, Asian white. And I got mixed up with the heroin, and and that was big money. But that was punishment. Punishment was if you got locked up for selling heroin, or you got locked up for guns, selling guns under the federal statutes, under the RICO, that was heavy punishment. The gambling and the prostitution, I got to tell you, you say it's a victimless crime. It's not. The girls, we had stables, and the girls would be transferred all over the country. And when they got stale in New York, we transferred them out to San Francisco, and we would transfer girls back from San Francisco to New York. And so it was an organized crime network. Make no doubt about it. It was an organized crime network that brought in millions of dollars a year.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal, and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Wow. Cap?
You sound like the Chinese version of Donnie Brasco, who created the Italian mob. And by the way, Tony Bowser, I knew Tony Bowser. I don't know if you're aware of it, but he was born in Spain. And he was a very controversial person. And your career was similar to mine. I spent 7 years in narcotics, 5 years of which was undercover. But it wasn't deep undercover like you were in. I still was able to go home and live with my wife and family.
You did B&B probably, and he was doing deep undercover.
Yeah, he was
right?
deep.
Yeah. I wasn't. Actually, it destroyed my first marriage, quite honestly, because I didn't want to bring anything home. And as being a past undercover, the bad guys come out at night. They're really not out there in the day. They're out at night. Back then, the bad guys were out at night. To carry the guns at night, it's harder to spot. do whatever you got to do at night. It's harder to spot. So, during the day we would sleep. But at 9 o'clock at night, we would wake up and we'd be absolute terrorists.
Well, I had to play the part of a junkie, so I didn't shave for days. My wife used to go nuts. Anyway, so now you're the commissioner of public safety for White Plains. How did you get to your current position in White Plains?
Well, again, I've had a blessed law enforcement career. I was in the South Tower when it collapsed on 9/11. Actually, it was funny because I was lieutenant commander of detectives, and I was in CCRB, which was on Rector Street when the first plane crashed into the building. And so I found myself in the building, and even though the North Tower got hit first, the South Tower was the first to collapse. And that's a whole story within itself. But I was running around. Those cops and firefighters, I mean, God rest their souls. And we've lost more since then to diseases and everything else. I am currently fighting a very, very bad disease from 9/11. And, it didn't hit me until years later. But when it hit me hard. And it's gutted me. And I've gone through 2 rounds of chemotherapy, but I'm still here. That was the day that I think changed the way we looked at things for a long, long time. And so Commissioner Kelly and Mayor Michael Bloomberg Mayor Michael Bloomberg was elected, and Mayor Rudy Giuliani had to leave, term limits. So I had known Commissioner Kelly from my earlier days when he was a precinct commander out in Queens. So I was always in charge of these different task forces. I was in charge of the FBI gang task force. I was in charge of the HIDTA task force. I was in charge of the social club nightclub task force after the Happy Lands fire. So they always gave me these assignments, and we did well. We did well, and what happened is that I was going to retire because I was very hurt in my heart, and I was very hurt for all the people that we lost. And, now I think about all the people that we saved. So, you just think about it. If it was 20 minutes later, there would have been probably another 100,000 people in that plaza if it was 20 minutes later. Right? So we did end up saving a lot of people's lives. And that's kind of what gets me over. I went, Commissioner Kelly asked me to join his newly created counterterrorism bureau. And he asked me to help him put it together and work with the CIA and work with other different agencies and work with the feds and everything else. And I did. And, I did a stint, which I can't really discuss. And my reward was to become a deputy commissioner up in Westchester County. That was my reward. And some phone calls were made, and the next thing you knew, I was the deputy commissioner of public safety in White Plains. Wow. And my whole thing was, because I was always a Long Island boy and a Queens boy, and I was like, how far is White Plains? Don't we pick apples up in White Plains? How far is that? And they say, you dummy, that's only 25 minutes from the Bronx. So I went up there, and I will tell you, I did 2 years as the deputy commissioner of public safety in White Plains. And then I was I decided I wanted to go for my PhD. And I was teaching full-time at Monroe College, going for my PhD, and I got the call from the city of Mount Vernon to be their police commissioner. So I went to the city of Mount Vernon. Wonderful, wonderful city. The seventh most densest city in the United States. And, a tough city, in our jargon, we would call it an A house, an absolute A house. And it bordered the Bronx, it bordered the 4-7, and it was an absolute A house. But you learn when you go to an A house. And so I went there as their commissioner, did 3.5 years in Mount Vernon, and reduced crime by 37%. And that was during, a new gang war that was going on in Mount Vernon. And I was recognized a lot in Westchester County, and I did a lot with my terrorism training for, the Westchester County counterterrorism people and everything else. And I brought, whatever I could to the table, and I still had a lot of connections in the NYPD. Unfortunately, most of them are gone now, but I still had a lot of connections in the NYPD. So I was able to get pretty good intelligence on what was going on. And, we were, for a good 10 years, very, very nervous after 9/11. You know that. Everybody was on their toes, and we were very, very, very nervous. So I was blessed to have been in counterterrorism and knew a lot of people in counterterrorism, and was able to get, unfiltered information that concerned Westchester County about any possible terrorism actions up in Westchester County and everything else. And I joined the Westchester County Chiefs of Police Association, a bunch of great people. Yep. The difference there's nothing like the monster. New York City, we all served in the monster. New York City is the monster, right? New York City Police Department has its own Navy, has its own Air Force, has its own special response, teams. They have everything. And, when you go to outside of New York City, it's completely different. Like when I first went to White Plains, I'm saying, how many precincts do I have? And they're like, excuse me? I'm like, well, how many precincts do I have, right? Yeah. And they're like, no, you have one police department, the White Plains Police Department. And I'm like, yeah, but how many precincts are in there? No, you have one police department, the White Plains Police Department. So that took a lot to get used to. But White Plains is a lovely city. And same thing with Mount Vernon. When I went to Mount Vernon, how many precincts do I have? You got the Mount Vernon Police Department. That's what you got. Right. But in White Plains, I have a terrific job. I've been there for 15 years now. And I am the public safety commissioner, and that means I'm the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the 911 commissioner, the EMS commissioner, the what do they call it here? Not the FEMA, but what do they call it here? The OEM commissioner. OEM. So I've got all hazards in White Plains. Everything. And I absolutely love it. I really do. It's a great city. It's growing. It's booming. It's rated one of the fastest growing cities in New York State.
At wearing that many hats, how was the political situation? You probably have to deal with many politicians that you didn't have to deal with in New York.
I did.
City, I mean.
I did. Again, the bigger the city, 8.5 million people. I don't know how big the city council is, but I think it's huge. And, in my city, I have a mayor and 6 council people that I deal with. They are extremely supportive of public safety. And I think my biggest thing was learning about the fire department. I think that was the biggest thing. And realizing that there is a big difference, although on 9/11 there was no difference whatsoever, right? You were in a uniform and you were all doing the right thing. But there is a difference between both jobs. There really is a difference between both jobs. And that was a little hard to assimilate, figuring out the fire department and all this other stuff. But I've got probably one of the best fire departments in the country, to be quite honest with you. We got an ISO rating of 1, which is nearly impossible. I think only like 60 some odd. Think of all the fire departments in the country. Only 60 some odd countries have an ISO rating of 1. And my fire department has an ISO rating of 1.
Wow. What is the size and population of White Plains?
Well, the reason our daytime population can be up to 300,000 people, because we are the hub of Westchester County. We are the capital of Westchester County, or capital city of Westchester County. We've got the busiest Metro North station north of Grand Central Station. We intersect 5 different highways. We've 5 minutes from the White Plains Airport, and we're 5 minutes from the Mario Bridge. So we are an extremely busy city. My nighttime population drops down to about 60,000 live-in residents, which is presumed to go up by tens of thousands in the next couple of years. And we've created we are a destination for people to come to at nighttime because of our restaurants and our bars and everything else. And so it's a beautiful city. It really is. And I say to all the listeners out here, if you have a chance, take a walk up there. Number one, you're going to be safe as heck, okay? You're not going to worry about anything walking through. You can walk through White Plains at 3 o'clock in the morning with your girl in hand or with your kids in hand, and you're not going to be worried about a darn thing in White Plains.
What's the size and structure of your department?
Okay, well, I have approximately 220 police officers. I have 170 firefighters. Approximately 170 firefighters. And then I've got approximately, with all the civilian staff together and everything else, including EMS and school crossing guards and everything else, probably a total of about 600 employees.
Oh, wow. Rory?
Yeah, Commissioner, you know, that's amazing. I mean,
well, for Westchester County,
for Westchester County, sure.
Because we different. Like I was getting to a point where there's nobody like New York City,
yes.
And I've been out to Los Angeles. I've been recruited by Oakland. I've been out to some of these biggest cities in the country. There's nothing like the NYPD, and in Westchester County, we have close to 1 million people now. Mm-hmm. But you have 8.5 million people in New York City.
Sure.
And that's just the people that took the census and live here. Think about the visitors and the commuters and all this other stuff, and you're policing anywhere up to, I would think, 12 million people a day, possibly, on holidays or special days or whatever. So this is a monster city. In Westchester County, we have 43 different police departments. Mm-hmm. We have police departments that have 3 people.
Right.
We have police departments that are part-time police departments. And then there are 5 cities in Westchester County. Yonkers, which is right on the Bronx border, just became the 3rd largest city, surpassing Rochester in the state of New York. Then yes, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you because you touched on it before, you know, you currently preside over the largest combined municipal department in the city of White Plains. You have the
Oh,
police.
absolutely.
You have the police. You have the fire department. You have emergency
EMS,
medical
everything.
service.
Mhm.
You also have, I think, the 911 system.
I do.
So, I mean, that's a lot. And correct me on this if I'm wrong. You're also, I think, as an agency, you're like the 8th largest in the state of New York.
We are.
Yeah,
We are.
that's amazing.
That's why it's funny because coming from, I mean, I learned so much from the Giant. But again, because sometimes, you look back and you say to yourself, it is so big that you got to have really, really good managers. The job in New York City, I'll tell you what, it is just so mammoth. And like I said, I'll have nothing ever bad to say about the New York City Police Department. They were great to me. But the job is mammoth. And compared to us, we're one of the largest departments. We're considered a medium-sized department in the country.
Commissioner, every agency has its own unique problems. Can you give us a little insight for the listeners? What are some of the unique police issues or perspectives that you have to deal with in White Plains?
Well, like everybody else, we're dealing with the laws that are passed upon us by Albany and by some of the politicians. This no bail law is absolutely, because we're a retail city. And this no bail law is absolutely crushing us. We can lock up the same person 9 times a day because there's no bail. Now, I understand the mentality behind the no bail law was that you didn't want to lock up some kid with a marijuana cigarette and the kid would end up in Rikers Island because he couldn't make bail and he would end up in Rikers Island for a month. That is not what I'm talking about, right? But I'm talking about, we've got a good city, and I often, because I teach at the police academy, and I teach the recruits, and I tell the recruits, you know what? 97% of the people in the United States of America just want to get their day done, and they just want to feel safe, right? Now, they may not like you, but that doesn't make them bad people.
Right.
They may not like the police, but that doesn't make them bad people. They're basically law-abiding people, 97%. But you have the 3% of recidivists, and something has to be done with that. Now, I will also say, looking in, I have 40-some-odd years, 45 years with police departments. Looking in from the outside, I will say that the police officers today are more trained than we have ever been when we came on the department. Mm-hmm. But they're expected to be psychiatrists. They're expected to be hostage negotiators. They're expected to be family counselors. They have so much pressure put on them and so much education put on them. Yes. And the other thing I find is people are calling 911 for everything. We had a call not too long ago about a 10-year-old girl who had a dispute with her parents, and she locked herself in the bathroom. And now, because of all the rules of engagement that we have learned to do over the years, and I'll say, hey, listen, it's cover your ass, right? Whatever. It's a 10-year-old girl. She's upset. She locked herself in the bathroom. Is there anything in the bathroom? Well, there's scissors. There's this. Is she suicidal? No, we don't think she's suicidal. She just locked herself in the bathroom. So do you realize that I had to have emergency service trucks respond, hostage negotiators respond, school resource officers respond? This is for a 10-year-old girl whose parents couldn't keep control of her, and she locked herself in the bathroom, and the parents call 911. That's not what 911 is all about.
That's very true. Commissioner, how is the recruitment and retention for the White Plains Police Department?
Very good. We have a long list of people that want to come on to our department.
Now, what is your vision for the future of the White Plains Police Department?
Well, we have to grow because the city is growing, so we'll grow. We need more everything. City is actually growing so fast it may be outgrowing itself, but my vision, is absolute growth of both departments because we provide an essential service, right? I mean, there's nobody else that'll put out a fire but firefighters, right? And there's nobody that will go to something dangerous and head straight into it like a police officer, right? And that, along with technology and everything else, the stuff is expensive. Now, I have cameras all over my city. I tried to fashion myself because I learned from my time, working with the CIA and stuff, a ring of steel. So I actually have a ordinance that if you have a business that's open after 8 o'clock at night, you must have a working camera that shows your cashier in the front of the sidewalk. So, and then we have all our city cameras up, and we have our license plate readers up, and so technology is really, really becoming something. It's just how much will the public tolerate? I have drones, I have this, I have that, but how much will the public tolerate? I will tell you that I just looked at a system, facial recognition. Now, facial recognition is not just for a bad guy. Our population is aging. So, we have many times where we have missing, aging people that are missing. And we are missing kids or whatever. And what happens is that the technology is so good now that the police officer can scan that into his body camera. And if he's just walking or she's just walking on patrol or on a bicycle or whatever they do, and a face comes up that's very similar to what the facial recognition does, it buzzes them and it tells them on their smartphone, hey, there's a person that's a couple of feet from you, south of you, that may be in help, may be lost, maybe a bad guy, whatever. But I'm not sure that we're ready for that yet. But again,
technology itself.
Yeah, exactly. But technology, artificial intelligence, technology, I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to be in for a very, very big change.
Mm-hmm.
Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time. So I hope we could do a part 2 because this is a great interview. Commissioner David Chong, I'd like to thank you for being here today on Cop Talk. Commissioner of Public Safety in White Plains. Keep up the good work, and we appreciate you being here today, as well as retired Sergeant Rory Capra, the legend.
Thanks again.
Right here with us. I mean, this is 2 great guests today. And David, come out here and say hello.
Off camera.
Off camera, okay, today. On that note,
well,
Commissioner?
I just want to thank you all. I know all of you, okay, by reputation, or some of you I've actually worked with in doing some cases and stuff and run across you in my 20-some-odd years with the NYPD. And to me, you are all heroes, and you're survivors, and I congratulate you on that. And I congratulate you on making the NYPD the best darn large department in the world. No matter what anybody says,
Thank you.
It's the best large darn department in the world. And it goes back to Captain Mamet when you were an undercover officer in the 1960s, okay? And it goes past you. This department wouldn't be the way it was without you guys putting in your lives and putting your lives on the line and really, really making this city a great city to live in. And this really is a great city to live in. No matter of all the negativism that's going around, it's because of you. It's the foundation that you set. That is these new fellas coming up. Of course, they're trained differently or whatever, and they're a different generation than us and all this other stuff. But it's still the foundation that you set as veterans. And I congratulate all of you. It was my absolute honor to be here today and to see you and some old friends. And I would be more than happy to come back.
The people of the city of White Plains are lucky to have you. They really are, sir.
Well, thank you.
Sure are.
Again, thank you very much. Thank you for this time. It was an absolute honor being with all of you.
Thank you.
I hope to see you all soon, very soon again.
You will.
Okay, just stay in good health.
Captain?
Thank you very much for this great interview. As a fellow undercover officer, I congratulate you.
Congratulations, Captain.
So everyone, if you like what you hear, you could subscribe to Cop Talk at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. You can also, Captain.
You can also view the commissioner on YouTube.
So on that note, I'd like to God bless you, God bless America, God bless law enforcement throughout the world, and God bless our U.S. military. Be safe out there. Thank you.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.